Channel 34, Cleveland Rocks. Do you remember the old song by Pete Townsend, My Generation? Here's an English translation of it. People attempt to belittle us merely because we are circumnavigatory. I don't wish to be detrimental. I'm merely referring to my peer group. Thank you very much.
This band is going to surprise a lot of... Standing by with a very special guest, let's go to Julie Matthews.
Yes, Tracy, thanks. I'm at the Lakeside Holiday Inn. I'm with Al Stewart, and he's given us a few minutes to chat. Thanks for being with us, Al.
Thank you.
You definitely have a very unique writing style. It almost creates...
I can tell you how to do it.
Well, I'm going to ask you. You almost seem to paint dreamlike pictures when you write. I was wondering where those picturesque lyrics come from.
Well, I used to call it folk rock in the 60s, and then we called it cerebral pop. I didn't, someone else did in the 70s. I now call it semantic theatre, just because I like playing with words. But I like to have backdrops, characters that appear in the background. Here's how to write an Al Stewart song. Dead easy. Anybody can do it. Lionel Richie, if he's writing a love song, would write Rosie meets Tom, and they fall in love, ooh-boopy-doo, ooh-boopy-doo, you know, okay? Sell 7 million copies. Billy Joel, you know, writes the same song. Rosie meets Tom in an Italian restaurant, boo-boopy-doo, boo-boopy-doo. Sells 1 million copies. Al Stewart, same song. Rosie meets Julie in Warsaw in 1938 during the crisis in the Sudetenland. Sells 100,000 copies, but much more characterization. In other words, set everything in three-dimensionally. Create times, countries, you know, sort of situations that people can interact with each other within, instead of just sort of saying Rosie meets Tom and they fall in love. It's a sure way not to sell lots of records, but it makes your songs that much more interesting. I like most of my songs, if they really work, I like them to be like précis of masterpiece theatre. You know, so my big hero is Alistair Cook. I can even do it. I can do his introduction, da-da-dum-dum-dum-dum, and then he goes, this program is made possible by a grant from Mobile Corporation, which invites you to join with them in supporting public television. Good evening, I'm Alistair Cook. We're now at part, 395 of The Jewel and the Crown. And, I mean, this is my influence. You know, I don't come from rock and roll. I came out of literature, you know. And my big heroes were Jean-Paul Sartre, Solzhenitsyn, you know, and Dickens and Shakespeare and whatever, you know. And I sort of got into rock and roll purely from words, and I still think in that way. You know, while the other kids were watching Eric Clapton, I was reading Albert Camus. So I have a different perspective. It must be, the words must be drama, they must be theatre, the characters must develop, you know. Themes must develop, stories must develop, you know. It isn't enough to say, oh, baby, you make me feel so fine, or groups write about their experiences on the road, woke up this morning in the Holiday Inn, you were fat, I was thin, you know, whatever. I mean, this is pretty dull stuff, you know.
Well, now, keeping that idea in mind of the way you create pictures and images, how do you think that video affects music today?
Well, I mean, if you have a totally vacuous dance song with 5 words in it, the video is very helpful because, you know, you can, I guess, take any reasonable-looking person, male or female, dress them up in, you know, attractive clothes, you know, sort of surround them with dancers and have them jiggle around and whatever, and sing their 5 words over and over again. I think it's very effective. I'm coming to that. I speak circumlocutously, so which means you're going to have to wait for me to arrive through a process of elaborate syntax at my point.
Well, all right.
Cleveland may rock, it'll have to rock a little more literately.
We need a little bit of culture.
In my case. Sorry, what was I? Where was I? Oh, yes, video. Yeah. You see, the thing is that if I were to do a video of Roads to Moscow or something, I mean, the mind boggles. I mean, I'm writing basically, a lot of my songs are straight out of historical events. You could use old footage, you know, from documentaries, like my Josephine Baker song off the new album. You know, if I were to make a video of it, fine, let's get some video of Josephine Baker. But I mean, the idea of me and you know, sort of David Lee Roth pants with a cucumber stuffed down the front of my trousers is probably unthinkable at this point in my life, I would imagine. I hope so. I'm sure you're glad to have that put on record.
Do you think at all that your writing style has changed over the years?
No. Not since 1970 when I wrote manuscript. That was the first time I had consciously used history. I threw in Prince Louis of Battenberg, who is first Lord of the Admiralty, I believe, in 1914, before the outbreak of World War I. Funny thing happened in 1914. After World War I, the British nation woke up to discover that the person in charge of our fleet and the king of our country were both Germans. So they figured they could switch the names and get away with it. In the case of the Wettins, who were on the throne, they became Windsors, which they are still, even though we're governed by a mob of Germans. I, of course, come from the Royal Stewart side, so I regard them all as impostors. I think Charles II was the last decent king we had, and or at least the last one who knew how to have fun. On the other side, the Battenbergs pulled, I think, one of the neatest tricks in history. They literally translated their name into English. Battenberg in German means Mountbatten, so he became Mountbatten, and that's where the Mountbatten name came from.
You had mentioned before about your earlier influence as far as being, historical figures. What about musically? Did you have any musical influence?
Yeah, I mean, initially, anyone who could write. Still to this day, I mean, I like. Well, you asked me early influences. I'm about to tell you current ones, but early ones, I guess Lonnie Donegan influenced everybody in England. I liked Bob Dylan when he came along. Chuck Berry before him. Chuck Berry. Here's an example of this is where the public's mind is at according to popular taste. Chuck Berry has had one gold single. You probably could name 30 of his hits straight off the top of your head, and he's had all these great songs, and he's like a rock poet. You know what his one gold single was? It was My Ding-a-Ling, folks. That's the one that sold 1 million. Now, nope. And I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about commerciality. He wrote all those great songs, and the only one to sell 1 million was My Ding-a-Ling. Well, anyway, then the Beatles influenced me. Then along came Leonard Cohen, Joni Mitchell, Fairport Convention, incredible string band, good writers. In the 70s, we were assaulted by something called disco, which I think probably dropped the collective IQ of this country by about 50 points. The boy with his finger in the dike, keeping, sort of sanity there, was Elvis Costello, I think, in the 70s. Now, refreshingly enough, we have things like the Waterboys, Mike Scott, Michelle Schacht, Sinead O'Connor, like interesting people who write, creatively. And I don't know, maybe it's all coming back again, But my influences are basically anyone who can write a sentence without repeating themselves, and with some vague idea of language construction and character development. That makes sense to you?
Yes.
I mean, it's not very rock and roll, is it? I mean, it's not so, oh, babe, I just want you so much. That never really did it for me, Lennon, I mean, was a terrific writer, because he was unpredictable. If I can see the next 3 lines of a song coming, and very often I play the radio, and then I, even if I've never heard the song before, I sing the next 3 songs along with the singer. I hate that. Yeah. You can't do that with Elvis Costello. Right. That's what makes him good.
You can't do them with you either.
I hope not.
Thank you very much for being with us, Al.
Thank you very much.
Back to you, Trace.